The elder's voice droned through the clearing, reciting the ancient words of the choosing ceremony, but Lena couldn't hear anything except the pounding of her own heart. She stood in the circle of torchlight with the other unmated wolves, head bowed like the rest. The scent of pine smoke and winter earth should have grounded her. Instead, it made her skin crawl, because she knew what came next. The moment Elder Gareth called her name, she would be bound, handed to whichever wolf he deemed worthy, just like her mother had been, 16 years ago, before everything went wrong. Lena's fingers curled into fists at her sides. No, not tonight. Not ever. Elder Gareth stepped forward, his gray robes sweeping the frost-tipped grass. His smile was kind for the crowd, cold for her alone, when their eyes met. "Lena Thorne," he called. She didn't move. Whispers rippled through the pack. Someone hissed her name in warning. Gareth's smile thinned. "Lena, step forward and kneel." She lifted her head instead. The Alpha King stood on the raised stone dais at the edge of the circle, silent and still as carved granite. Kai Blackwood. The youngest king in 3 generations. Rumor said he'd killed his own father to take the throne, but no one dared speak it aloud. His golden eyes swept the ceremony with bored detachment, until they landed on her. Lena felt the weight of that gaze like a hand closing around her throat. Not cruel, just absolute. She forced herself to breathe, to speak. "I will not kneel," she said. The clearing went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Elder Gareth's face darkened. "You dare." "I dare," Lena interrupted, her voice steadier than her hands. "Because you have no right to bind me. Or anyone." Gasps erupted around her. Someone grabbed her arm, trying to pull her back into line, but she wrenched free. She turned to face the Alpha King directly. Kai hadn't moved, but his eyes, they were brighter now, burning. Lena's wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless and afraid and strangely eager. She ignored it. "Elder Gareth," she said, loud enough for the whole pack to hear, "murdered my mother when I was 6 years old. He called it an accident. A rogue attack." The elder's face went white. Lena took a step forward. "But it wasn't." She refused him. Refused to be silenced when she found out what he was doing, who he was selling pack secrets to. "Lies!" Gareth snarled. "Blasphemy! She speaks madness, my king." "She speaks," Kai said quietly, and the entire clearing froze. The Alpha King descended the dais steps with liquid grace, each movement controlled and predatory. He didn't look at Gareth. He didn't look at the shocked elders or the whispering crowd. He looked only at Lena. And as he moved closer, something inside her chest pulled tight, snapped into place. No, not now. Not him. But her wolf knew. She could feel the recognition howling through her blood, electric and undeniable. The scent of winter cedar and smoke wrapped around her, so strong she could taste it. "Mate," Lena's breath caught. Kai stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. His jaw was tight, his hands loose at his sides, but every line of his body radiated tension. His wolf was right there, right beneath the surface. Golden eyes flared brighter, and for a heartbeat she saw them glow. "Say it again," he said, his voice low and rough. "What you accuse him of." Lena's throat was dry. She could feel the bond thrumming between them, demanding, insistent, but she forced herself to focus. This was why she'd come. Not for him. For her mother. "Gareth has been selling information to the rival packs for years," she said. "He's the reason we lost the northern border skirmishes, the reason 3 scouts died last winter." She met Kai's burning gaze without flinching. "And when my mother found proof, he killed her to keep her silent." The words hung in the frozen air. Kai's jaw tightened. His gaze flicked once to Gareth, who stood pale and shaking, then back to Lena. She felt the moment his wolf surged, felt the heat of it roll through the bond like wildfire. "The elders will answer these accusations," Kai said, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "Starting now." Gareth stumbled back a step. "My king, this is—" Silence. The word was barely louder than a breath, but it carried the weight of command, of dominance, of an alpha who would not be questioned. Gareth's mouth snapped shut. Kai turned his head slightly, addressing the pack without taking his eyes off Lena. "Anyone who speaks against her tonight answers to me." Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. He didn't believe her. Not yet. But he wasn't dismissing her either. And the bond, she could feel it now, bright and alive and terrifying, pulling her toward him, even as every instinct screamed to run. Kai's gaze dropped briefly to her throat, to the place where a mate mark would bloom, his pupils dilated. When he looked back up, his expression was unreadable. Fury and hunger and something else she couldn't name. "Bring her to my hall," he said. Then he turned and walked away, leaving the pack in chaos behind him. Kai made it 10 paces before his wolf snarled so loud he thought the sound might tear through his chest. "Mine." He forced himself to keep walking, to not turn around and look at her again, because if he did, every wolf in the clearing would see exactly what he was trying to hide. The mate bond burned through him like fire in his veins. He'd felt it the instant she'd risen to her feet. Before she'd even spoken. The moment her scent had cut through the ceremony smoke, something inside him had woken. Winter pine and rain-soaked earth. "Mate." Kai's hands flexed at his sides. His claws were already pressing against his fingertips. His wolf demanding he go back, claim what was his, drag her away from the staring pack and mark her before anyone else could even think. No, he was an alpha king, not some feral pup ruled by instinct. Behind him, voices rose in chaos, the elders arguing, the pack muttering, but he heard none of it clearly. All his senses were locked on her. He could still feel her eyes on his back, still taste her defiance in the air. She'd stood in front of 300 wolves and accused an elder of treason and murder, and she hadn't flinched, hadn't wavered. Kai had seen warriors with decades of training show less spine. His wolf growled again, this time in approval. Strong, brave, ours. He reached the edge of the clearing and stopped. The stone path to his hall stretched ahead, torches flickering in the cold wind. He should keep walking, should let his guards bring her, should take the time to think, to plan, to figure out what the hell he was supposed to do with a mate who'd just blown his carefully controlled world apart. Instead, he turned around. Lena stood exactly where he'd left her. 2 of his guards flanked her now, hands on their weapons but not touching her. Smart. If they'd laid a hand on her, Kai wasn't sure he could have stopped his wolf from ripping through. She was watching him. Even across the distance, even with the firelight and shadows, he felt the weight of her gaze. Steady, unflinching, waiting to see what he'd do. His wolf surged again, harder this time, demanding he go to her, protect her. The bond thrummed between them, a living thing, and he knew she felt it too. He'd seen the moment it hit her, the way her breath had caught, the way her pupils had blown wide. She knew, and she was terrified. Kai could smell the fear on her, faint but real, threaded through with something sharper. Determination. She wasn't running, wasn't backing down, even knowing what he was, what they were. Gods, she was either the bravest person he'd ever met or the most reckless. Probably both. Gareth's voice rose above the others, shrill and desperate. "My king, you cannot possibly—" Kai's growl cut him off. It rolled through the clearing like thunder, low and lethal, and every wolf there froze. Submission rippled outward in waves. Even the elders dropped their gazes. All except Lena. She met his eyes across the distance, chin lifted, and something hot and possessive coiled in his chest. Yes, his wolf was practically purring now. Strong enough, brave enough, perfect. Kai forced himself to breathe, to think past the instinct screaming at him, to claim her here and now in front of everyone. He couldn't. Not yet. Not until he knew the truth of what she'd said. Not until he understood why the moon goddess had sent him a mate tonight, of all nights, in the middle of a ceremony meant to bind the pack's future. A ceremony she'd just shattered. The prophecy stirred in the back of his mind, the one his mother had whispered to him before she died, the one he'd tried to forget. When defiance breaks the ancient chain, the queen will rise in moon and flame. He'd always assumed it meant an enemy, a rival, a threat. Not Ikrol with fire in her eyes and accusations on her lips, and a mate bond burning between them so bright it made his vision haze. Kai turned back toward the hall. This time, he didn't stop walking, but he let his voice carry back over his shoulder, low and edged with command. If anyone touches her before I return, I'll kill them myself. The clearing went silent. He felt the bond pulse, hot and insistent as he walked away. Felt her watching him go. His wolf was howling inside, furious at the distance. But Kai shoved it down. He needed to think. Needed to figure out how to handle a mate who just accused his most trusted elder of treason. A mate who might be the key to the prophecy that had haunted his bloodline for generations. A mate who was either going to save his pack or destroy everything he'd spent his life building. The bond flared again, sharp and demanding. Kai's hands shook as he pushed open the doors to his hall. He had until she arrived to get himself under control. It wouldn't be enough. Kai didn't make it 3 steps into the hall before the council closed in. Elder Gareth was first through the doors, breathless and pale, followed by Torin and Mira. The younger wolves hung back near the threshold, but their eyes tracked every movement. Everyone wanted to see what the Alpha King would do. This is madness. Gareth's voice shook with something that might have been fear or fury. Kai couldn't tell anymore. You cannot allow this to stand. She disrupted a sacred ceremony. She accused me of crimes I did not commit. She must be punished according to... Enough. Kai's voice was soft. That was the only warning he gave before his power rolled out like a physical blow. Gareth staggered back a step. Torin braced himself against the stone pillar. Even Mira, who rarely showed submission to anyone, ducked her head. The bond flared hot in his chest, approving. Kai forced himself to breathe through it. To think past the wolf screaming at him to go back outside and drag his mate somewhere private, where he could figure out what the hell was happening between them. She will be brought here, Kai said. His voice was steady now, controlled. To my hall. Not the cells, not the council chamber. Here. Gareth opened his mouth to argue. Kai's eyes flashed gold. The elder went silent. If her accusations are true... Kai let the words hang in the air, heavy with implication. Then we have a traitor in our midst. And if they are not true, then we have a confused young wolf who needs guidance, not a mob. Torin stepped forward, careful and measured. He was the only one on the council who'd earned Kai's trust through action instead of birthright. And the ceremony, the choosing, will be completed when the truth is known. Kai turned toward the window, dismissing them with a gesture. Send runners to verify her claims. Check the records. Question the families involved. I want answers by dawn. My king! Asterisk now, Torin. The command was absolute. Torin bowed and left without another word. Mira followed. Gareth lingered a moment longer, his face pale and pinched, before finally turning toward the door. Kai waited until their footsteps faded, then he let out a breath that shook. His hands were trembling again. The bond was pulling at him like a physical tether, demanding he go back to the clearing and claim what was his. His wolf was furious at the distance. At the walls between them. She's ours. Go back. Bring her here. Now. Kai gripped the edge of the stone windowsill hard enough that his knuckles went white. He couldn't. Not yet. Not until he understood what she'd done and why the bond had chosen tonight, right in the middle of the one ceremony that held the pack's future together. The prophecy whispered through his mind again. When defiance breaks the ancient chain, the queen will rise in moon and flame. His mother had made him memorize it when he was barely old enough to shift, had told him it was the most important thing he'd ever learn, that when the time came, he would have to choose between tradition and destiny. He'd never understood what she meant. Until now. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Multiple sets. Kai didn't turn around. Bring her in. The doors opened. He felt her before he saw her. That same electric pull that had stopped him cold in the clearing. Her scent hit him next. Wild and bright. And his wolf surged against his control so hard he had to lock his jaw to keep from shifting. 2 guards flanked her. They kept their distance, smart enough not to touch her after his warning. Lena walked between them with her head high and her shoulders straight. No fear in her stride. No hesitation. She looked like she was walking into a coronation instead of a judgment. Kai's wolf purred. The guards stopped just inside the threshold. One of them glanced at Kai, uncertain. "Leave us." "My king, are you certain?" Kai turned his head just enough to let his eyes flash gold. The guards bowed and retreated so fast they nearly tripped over each other. The doors closed with a heavy thud. Silence filled the hall. Kai stayed at the window, his back to her, his hands still gripping the stone. He didn't trust himself to turn around yet. Didn't trust his wolf not to take over the moment he looked at her. The bond was screaming at him to move. To close the distance. To touch her and confirm what his instincts already knew. "You should be afraid." His voice came out rougher than he intended. He heard her shift her weight, heard the soft rustle of fabric as she folded her arms. "I know." 2 words. Steady and clear. No apology. No begging. Kai's wolf howled in approval. He finally turned to face her. She stood in the center of his hall, firelight from the torches painting gold across her skin. Her eyes met his without flinching. The same defiance he'd seen in the clearing. The same fire. The bond flared so bright between them it was a wonder the whole room didn't light up. "Tell me why I shouldn't throw you in the cells right now," Kai said quietly. "Tell me why I shouldn't let the council decide your fate for disrupting the most sacred ceremony our pack holds." Lena lifted her chin higher. "Because you felt it too." The words landed between them like a thrown blade. Kai's chest rose and fell, each breath measured and deliberate. His wolf clawed at his restraint, demanding he close the distance, demanding he claim what was already his. But he was a king before he was a wolf. He had to be. "You think you can walk into my hall and accuse me of feeling something?" His voice dropped lower, each word edged with warning. "You think that buys you anything?" Lena took a single step forward. Just one. But it was enough to make his pulse spike. "I think you know exactly what I'm talking about," she said softly. "I think you've been fighting it since the moment I stood up in that clearing." Kai's hands flexed at his sides. His claws threatened to break through. "You broke sacred law. I spoke the truth. You defied the elders in front of the entire pack. Because one of them is a liar and a thief." Her voice shook now, not with fear but with rage barely contained. "Because Elder Thorne stole my family's land after my father died. Because he forced my mother into silence with threats. Because he's been bleeding our bloodline dry for 5 years and no one would listen." The air between them crackled. Kai's wolf stilled. Not in retreat, but in sharp, focused attention. "What did you say?" Lena's hands curled into fists. "Elder Thorne." "He took everything from us after the fever claimed my father. Said the debts were owed. Said it was pack law. But my mother kept the records. She showed me the ledgers before she died last winter." Her voice broke on the last word, just for a second. But Kai heard it, heard the grief underneath the fire. "She told me the prophecy," Lena continued, her eyes bright but dry. "The one about the queen who would come when the pack needed cleansing. She said when the choosing ceremony came, I'd know what to do." Kai's chest tightened. He knew that prophecy. Every alpha did. It was ancient. Whispered. Most dismissed it as legend meant to comfort the powerless. But his grandmother had believed it. Had told him once, when he was young and still learning what it meant to lead, that the moon goddess never broke her promises. That the queen would come when corruption ran too deep for even kings to see. Kai had thought she was speaking in metaphors. Now he wasn't sure. If what you're saying is true, it is. Then you've just accused one of my council of crimes that carry exile or death. Kai took a step toward her, his voice hardening. You understand what that means. If you're wrong, if you can't prove it, the pack will demand your blood. Lena didn't retreat. Didn't even flinch. Then let them investigate, she said. Let them look at the records. Let them ask the families Thorne has bled over the years. I'm not the only one. I'm just the only one who stopped being afraid. Kai stared at her, really looked at her. Not just the defiance or the fire or the way his wolf howled every time she breathed. He looked at the girl who had lost her father to fever and her mother to grief. The girl who had watched her family's legacy stolen piece by piece. The girl who had stood in front of the entire pack and spoken a name that could get her killed. Because no one else would. His wolf didn't just want her. It recognized her. You're either the bravest person I've ever met, Kai said quietly, or the most reckless. Lena's lips curved just slightly. Maybe both. Something in his chest cracked, not broke, but shifted, like a door he'd kept locked for years suddenly swinging open. He took another step, close enough now that he could see the pulse jumping at her throat, close enough to catch the faint tremble in her hands that she was trying so hard to hide. She was afraid. She just wasn't letting it win. If I protect you, Kai said, his voice low and rough, the council will call it favoritism. They'll say the bond is clouding my judgment. Is it? Yes. The honesty surprised even him. Lena's breath hitched. Kai lifted one hand, slowly, giving her time to step back. She didn't. He let his fingers hover just beside her jaw, not quite touching, the bond sparking in the space between them. But that doesn't mean you're wrong, he murmured. Her eyes widened. I'll investigate your claim, Kai said. I'll look at the records myself. And if Thorne has done what you say, he'll answer for it. Lena's shoulders sagged just slightly, relief flickering across her face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Kai dropped his hand and stepped back, putting distance between them, before his wolf decided distance was the enemy. You'll stay here, in the hall, under guard. Her relief turned sharp. You're keeping me prisoner. I'm keeping you alive. His voice hardened. The moment the pack finds out I'm investigating an elder because of your accusation, half of them will want you dead. The other half will want to crown you. Either way, you're not safe outside these walls. Lena opened her mouth to argue. A knock shattered the silence. Sharp, urgent, wrong. Kai turned toward the door, every instinct snapping to attention. Enter. The door swung open. A scout stumbled in, breathing hard, blood streaking his torn shirt. My king. The wolf's voice shook. Rival pack. Scouts spotted at the northern border, moving in formation. Kai's entire body went still. For half a breath, the chamber was silent, except for the scout's ragged breathing and the distant howl of wind against stone. Then his wolf surged. He felt the shift ripple under his skin, claws pressing against fingertips, canines sharpening. The air around him thickened with dominance, with fury barely leashed. Lena took a step back, her eyes widening. Not at the scout. At him. Kai forced the shift down, forced his body to obey when every instinct screamed to hunt, to protect, to tear apart anything that threatened his territory, his mate. He turned to the scout, his voice deadly calm. How many? At least a dozen. The wolf swallowed hard. Maybe more. They're testing the patrols, my king. Probing for weakness. Kai's jaw tightened. Send word to Captain Reese. Double the border guard. No one crosses without my order. The scout hesitated. They're saying, rumors are spreading, my king. About the ceremony, about... His gaze flicked to Lena for just a second. About chaos in the pack. Of course they were. Rival packs didn't move without reason, and a fractured leadership was an invitation written in blood. Kai's hands curled into fists. Go. The scout bowed and fled. The door closed. Silence crashed back in. Lena stood frozen near the window, her face pale but her chin still lifted. Still defiant, even when the world was collapsing around them. Kai exhaled slowly, forcing his heartbeat to steady, forcing his wolf to settle. You see what you've done? His voice came out rougher than he intended. You broke the ceremony, accused an elder. And now the rival packs think we're vulnerable. Lena's eyes flashed. I didn't invite them to our border. No, but you gave them a reason to think we're weak. We were already weak. Her voice rose, sharp and clear. A pack that lets corruption fester in its own leadership? That's not strength, Kai. That's rot. She used his name. Not my king. Not Alpha. Just Kai. And something in his chest twisted at the sound of it. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just in front of her. Close enough to feel the heat radiating off her skin. Close enough to see the way her pulse hammered at her throat. You think I don't know that? His voice dropped low, almost a growl. You think I haven't spent years trying to hold this pack together while the old guard clings to traditions that are bleeding us dry? Lena's breath hitched. Then why didn't you do something? Because I needed proof. Kai's gaze burned into hers. I needed someone brave enough, or reckless enough, to speak the truth out loud. Her lips parted. Kai stepped back before he did something stupid, before his wolf decided the bond was more important than duty. Tell me everything, he said, about Thorne, about what he did to your family. Lena blinked, the anger in her eyes giving way to something raw. Grief, maybe, or old, buried pain finally dragged into the light. She wrapped her arms around herself, a small, protective gesture that made his wolf whine. My father owned land, she said quietly. Good land, near the eastern ridge. When he died, Thorne claimed there were debts. Records that said my father owed the pack treasury. Kai's jaw tightened. Were there? No. Her voice hardened. My father kept his own ledgers. I saw them. He owed nothing. But Thorne had the council's ear, and I was just a girl. No one listened. She turned toward the window, staring out at the dark forest beyond. Thorne took the land, sold it to his nephew. My mother tried to fight it, but the stress, the grief. Lena's voice cracked. She didn't last the winter. Kai felt the rage coil tighter in his chest, felt his claws pressing against his palms again. Why didn't you come to me? Lena laughed, bitter and broken. You were a new king, surrounded by elders who'd been in power since before you were born. You think I believed you'd listen to a nobody? You're not a nobody. The words came out before he could stop them. Lena turned, her eyes searching his face. Kai held her gaze. If what you're saying is true, if Thorne falsified records and stole from your family, he didn't just betray you. He betrayed the entire pack. I know. And if I prove it, Kai continued, his voice deadly quiet, he'll be stripped of rank. Exiled, maybe worse. Lena's chin lifted. Good. There it was again. That fire. That refusal to bend, even when the world was crushing down on her. Kai's wolf hummed with approval. He turned toward the desk, pulling open a drawer and retrieving a leather-bound ledger. The pack's official records, kept by the council for generations. I'll start here, he said. Cross-reference Thorne's reports with the treasury logs. If there's a discrepancy. He glanced up at her. You'll have your proof. Lena's shoulders sagged, just slightly, relief flickering across her face again. Thank you, she whispered. Kai shook his head. Don't thank me yet. If I'm wrong, If the records support Thorne, I can't protect you from the council's judgment. Her eyes hardened. I'm not wrong. Then we'll find out together. The bond pulsed between them. Warm and insistent, and impossible to ignore. Lena took a step toward him. Just one. Why are you doing this? Kai met her gaze. Because you spoke the truth when no one else would. And because... He hesitated. Because my wolf won't let me do anything else. Her breath caught. Before either of them could speak again, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Heavy. Urgent. Kai's instincts flared. The door swung open without a knock. Councilman Thorne stood in the doorway, his face twisted with fury. And behind him, 3 more elders. Their eyes cold, their stances hostile. My king, Thorne said, his voice dripping false respect. We need to talk about the girl. Kai's wolf surged to the surface before his human mind could catch up. His eyes flared gold. His canines descended. The growl that rolled from his chest was low enough to rattle the stone walls. The elders froze in the doorway. Thorne's false smile vanished. You don't enter this room without permission, Kai said, each word edged in violence. You don't address me without invitation. And you sure as hell don't call her the girl in my presence. Thorne's jaw clenched. But he bowed his head. Barely. Apologies, Alpha. The other 3 elders remained silent. Their eyes flicked from Kai to Lena and back again. Kai could feel her presence at his back, close enough that her scent wrapped around him, grounding him even as his wolf screamed to protect. What do you want? Kai asked. Thorne straightened. We've received word from the Border Patrol. Scouts from the Crescent Ridge Pack were spotted 3 miles inside our territory. Kai's entire body went rigid. Crescent Ridge. The rival pack that had been testing boundaries for months, probing for weakness, waiting for an opening. When? Kai demanded. 2 hours ago. One of the other elders answered. A thin man named Garrett. They retreated when confronted, but they were watching. Kai finished. Listening. Thorne nodded slowly. News of tonight's disruption has already spread beyond the pack, my king. Word travels fast when tradition is broken. His gaze slid past Kai to Lena. Cold. Calculating. They think we're weak, Thorne continued. Divided. And they're not wrong. Kai's claws dug into his palms, blood welled hot against his skin. We're not divided, he said. We're investigating a crime. Thorne's expression didn't change. Investigating a baseless accusation made by a wolf with no rank, no allies, no proof. I have proof, Lena said quietly from behind Kai. The elders' eyes snapped to her. Kai didn't turn, didn't move, but his wolf roared approval at the strength in her voice. You have conjecture, Thorne shot back. Old grievances, a mother's paranoia passed down to her daughter. Lena stepped forward. Close enough now that Kai could feel the heat of her beside him. I have land deeds, she said, witness statements, and a timeline that proves you falsified council records to steal my family's territory. Thorne's face darkened. Careful, girl. Her name is Lena, Kai growled. The room went silent. Garrett shifted uneasily. The other 2 elders exchanged glances. Thorne's eyes narrowed. My king, with all respect, this is exactly the kind of internal chaos that emboldens our enemies. We can't afford to entertain wild accusations when Crescent Ridge is circling. Which is why, Kai said slowly, we'll settle this quickly. He turned to Garrett. Pull the land records from the archives. Every deed filed in the last 20 years. Cross-reference with the treasury logs. Garrett hesitated. Alpha, that will take days. Then start now, Kai said, and have the findings delivered to me by dawn. Thorne stepped forward. My king, this is madness. We should be fortifying the border, not wasting time on. I didn't ask for your opinion, Kai cut in. His voice dropped lower, colder. I gave you an order. The bond pulsed hot and insistent at his back. Thorne's jaw worked, but he bowed his head. As you command, Alpha. Kai turned his gaze to the other elders. Double the border patrols. Send word to the outlying dens to move their families closer to the main territory. And make it clear to Crescent Ridge that any wolf caught inside our borders will be dealt with permanently. The elders nodded in unison. Dismissed, Kai said. They filed out slowly, reluctantly. Thorne was the last to leave. He paused at the threshold, his gaze lingering on Lena for just a heartbeat too long. Then the door closed. Kai exhaled hard. His claws retracted. His canines slid back into place. But the wolf inside him was still prowling, still unsatisfied. That was a risk, Lena said softly. Kai turned to face her. So was defying the ceremony. Her lips twitched. Almost a smile. Fair. Crescent Ridge won't wait long, Kai continued. If they think we're vulnerable, if they believe the pack is divided, they'll attack. Lena finished. Kai nodded. And I can't fight a war on two fronts. Lena's eyes searched his face. So what do we do? Kai held her gaze. We prove the truth. Fast, before Thorne has time to cover his tracks. And if we can't, then I'll defend you anyway, Kai said. The words came out rougher than he intended. Proof or no proof, the bond won't let me do anything else. Lena's breath caught. The bond flared between them, warm and electric and impossibly strong. You barely know me, she whispered. I know enough, Kai said. He took a step closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her dark eyes, close enough to catch the faint tremor in her hands. You're under my protection now, he said, until this is over, no matter what the council says. Lena's chin lifted. I don't need protection. I know, Kai murmured, but you're getting it anyway. The bond pulsed again, stronger this time, and somewhere in the distance a howl rose from the border. Lena followed two guards down the eastern corridor, her wrists still bare, but her pulse still racing from the weight of Kai's final words. You're under my protection now. The stone walls felt narrower here. Older. The torchlight flickered in uneven pools, and every shadow seemed to hold a pair of watching eyes. She could still feel the bond humming beneath her ribs. Still taste the anger in the council chamber, the way Kai had silenced them all with nothing but his voice and his presence. He'd defended her, not because she'd proven anything yet, because he'd chosen to. The guards stopped at a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron. One of them pulled a key from his belt, unlocked it, and stepped aside. Your room, the older guard said. His tone was flat. Careful. You're not to leave without the Alpha King's permission. Lena stepped inside. The room was small but clean. A narrow bed against one wall, a basin and pitcher on a low table, a single window overlooking the courtyard below. It wasn't a cell, but it wasn't freedom either. The door closed behind her. The lock clicked. She let out a slow breath and crossed to the window. The moon was high now, full and silver and impossibly bright. The courtyard below was empty except for a pair of sentries pacing the far wall. Somewhere beyond the trees, the border stretched dark and silent. Crescent Ridge was out there, waiting, and Thorne was somewhere inside these walls, covering his tracks. Lena pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Her mother's voice echoed in the back of her mind. When the mark comes, don't fight it. But don't let it swallow you whole either. She closed her eyes. The bond pulsed again, faint but steady, like a second heartbeat layered beneath her own. She wondered if Kai could feel it too. Hours passed. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, tracing the grain of the wood with one finger. The moon had shifted across the sky. The courtyard had fallen silent. She was just beginning to think she'd been forgotten, when she heard footsteps in the corridor. Slow. Deliberate. Not the guards. The lock turned. The door opened. Kai stepped inside and closed it softly behind him. Lena rose to her feet. He looked tired. His jaw was still tight, his shoulders tense, but the fury from the council chamber had faded into something quieter. Something heavier. "I told the guards I'd check on you myself," Kai said. His voice was low, rough at the edges. Lena's pulse quickened. "You didn't have to." "I know." He stayed near the door, like he wasn't sure if he should come closer. The bond flickered between them, tentative and bright. "They're saying you're reckless," Lena said quietly, "for protecting me." Kai's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "They've said worse." "And if Thorne doesn't confess? If the investigation finds nothing?" "Then I'll deal with it." Kai's gaze locked onto hers. "I already told you. I'm not letting anyone touch you." Lena's chest tightened. "Why?" The question hung in the air between them. Kai was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped forward. "Just one step." "Because the moment you walked into that ceremony," he said. "The moment I caught your scent." "I knew." Lena's breath hitched. "Knew what?" "That you were mine." The bond flared hot and insistent. Lena's hands curled into fists at her sides. "The mate bond." "Yes. And if I don't want it?" Kai's jaw tightened. "Then I'll walk away." His voice dropped lower. "But I'll still protect you, bond or no bond." Lena searched his face. He meant it. She could see it in the set of his shoulders, the tension in his hands. "I feel it too," she admitted softly. "The bond. I felt it the moment you looked at me." Kai exhaled hard, like he'd been holding his breath. "Then you understand," he said, "why I can't let them hurt you." "It's not just the bond," Lena said. "You believe me. About Thorne." "I do." "Why?" Kai stepped closer. Close enough now that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes, the faint tremor in his clenched fists. "Because you didn't flinch when I growled at you," he said. "Because you stood in front of a room full of wolves who wanted you punished, and you didn't back down." He paused. "And because I've seen the way Thorne looks at power," Kai continued. "Like he's owed it. Like it should have been his." Lena's throat tightened. "He killed my father." "I know," Kai said quietly. "And if the investigation proves it, I'll let you decide what happens to him." The bond pulsed again, warm and steady and impossibly strong. Lena took a breath. "What if the prophecy's real?" Kai's gaze didn't waver. "What prophecy?" "The one my mother told me," Lena said. "The one that says the queen will either unite the pack or destroy it." Kai was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out, slowly, and his fingertips brushed the back of her hand. The bond flared bright. "Then we'll make sure it's the first one," he said. Lena's breath caught. His touch was warm. Careful. Like he was afraid she might pull away. She didn't. "You should rest," Kai said quietly. "Tomorrow's going to be harder." He stepped back. His hand fell away. But the bond stayed strong. "Kai," Lena said. He paused at the door. "Thank you," she whispered. His eyes softened. "Just for a heartbeat." "Get some sleep," he said. Then he was gone. The lock clicked, and Lena stood alone in the moonlight, her hand still tingling where his fingers had touched hers. Lena woke to pale gray light filtering through the narrow window. Her body ached, not from injury, but from tension she hadn't released. She sat up slowly. The room was quiet, empty, but the bond hummed beneath her ribs like a second heartbeat. Kai's presence lingered, even though he was gone. She pressed her palm to her chest and tried to steady her breathing. The prophecy her mother had whispered before she died, the one about the queen who would either save or shatter the kingdom, felt heavier now, real, because the bond wasn't something she could ignore anymore. It pulsed with every thought of him. Lena stood and paced to the window. The courtyard below was already stirring. Wolves moved through the dawn mist, preparing for the day, for whatever came next. She wondered if they knew, if they could feel the shift in the air the way she could. A knock sounded at the door. Lena turned. "Come in." A young wolf entered. Dark hair pulled back, carrying a tray of bread and tea. She set it on the table without meeting Lena's eyes. "The Alpha King asks that you join him in the hall after you've eaten," the girl said quietly. Lena nodded. "Thank you." The girl hesitated. Then she looked up. "Is it true," she whispered, "that you called out Elder Thorne in front of everyone?" Lena's throat tightened. "Yes," the girl's eyes widened. "My brother said you didn't even flinch when the Alpha growled." "I was terrified," Lena admitted softly. The girl blinked. Then a small smile tugged at her lips. "But you did it anyway." Lena nodded. The girl ducked her head and left quickly. But the door didn't quite close all the way. Lena stood alone again. She ate the bread slowly, drank the tea, let the warmth settle in her stomach. Then she dressed in the clean tunic that had been left folded on the chair, pulled her hair back, and steeled herself. Whatever Kai wanted to say, she needed to. Be ready. The hall was quieter this time. No crowd of elders, no ceremonial torches. Just Kai, standing near the long table, his hands braced on the edge like he was holding himself upright. He looked up when she entered. His eyes were darker today. Tired. But the gold still flared when their gazes met. The bond pulsed hard. Lena stopped a few feet away. "You wanted to see me." Kai straightened. The messenger brought more news this morning. Her stomach tightened. "About the rival pack?" "They've been watching us for weeks," Kai said, waiting for a moment of weakness. Lena's breath hitched. "And I gave them one." "No." His voice was firm, sharp. "Thorne gave them one. You exposed it." She wanted to believe that. But the weight in his eyes told her the council didn't agree. "They want you punished," Kai said quietly. "They think if I let your defiance stand, the pack will fracture." Lena's hands curled into fists. "And what do you think?" Kai moved around the table, slow, deliberate, his gaze never leaving hers. "I think you're the bravest person I've ever met," he said. The bond flared so bright she almost gasped. "I also think you're reckless," he continued, "and stubborn. And you have no idea how close you came to being torn apart in that room." Lena lifted her chin. "I knew the risk." "Did you?" Kai stopped in front of her, close enough now that she could see the faint bruise on his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. "Or did you just decide your life was worth less than the truth?" Her throat tightened. "I had to," she whispered. "No one else would." Kai exhaled hard. His hand lifted, hesitated. Then his fingers brushed her cheek. The bond sang. "You don't have to do this alone anymore," he said quietly. Lena's chest ached. "You can't protect me from your own counsel." "Watch me!" The words were barely a growl. Lena's breath caught. "Kai." "I already told them," he said. "You're under my protection until the investigation is complete. If they want to challenge that, they can challenge me." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "That's not fair to you." "Fair?" Kai's jaw tightened. "Lena, the bond doesn't care about fair. And neither do I." She stared up at him. His hand was still on her cheek, warm, steady. "What happens when they find out?" she whispered. "About the bond?" Kai's thumb traced her cheekbone. Gentle, reverent. "Then they'll know why I'm willing to burn the whole kingdom down before I let anyone hurt you," he said. The bond flared so bright Lena's knees nearly buckled. You can't say things like that, she breathed. Why not? Because, she swallowed hard. Because I'm starting to believe you. Kai's eyes softened, just for a heartbeat. Then his hand fell away and he stepped back. I have to meet with the scouts, he said quietly, but I need you to stay here. In the hall, where I know you're safe. Lena nodded. She didn't trust her voice. Kai turned toward the door, then paused. Lena. She looked up. If the prophecy's real, he said, if you really are meant to be queen, then I'll stand beside you, no matter what it costs. Her breath hitched. Even if it means defying the council? She whispered. Kai's gaze burned into hers. Especially then. Then he was gone, and Lena stood alone in the empty hall, the bond still singing beneath her skin, and the weight of a kingdom pressing down on her shoulders. The messenger arrived just before dawn. Lena heard the commotion from her guarded room. Boots pounding stone, urgent voices echoing through the corridors. Her pulse spiked. She crossed to the door and pressed her ear against the wood. Elder Corwin, someone was saying. Records found in his chambers. Her breath caught. Bloodline scrolls, forged signatures, payments to the northern traders. Lena's hand flew to her mouth. They'd found it. The proof. She stepped back from the door just as the lock clicked. The guard's face appeared, younger than the others. His expression tight, with something between shock and awe. Miss, he said quietly, the Alpha King requests your presence in the council chamber. Lena's heart hammered. Now? Immediately. She followed him through the waking halls. The sky outside the narrow windows was still dark, just the faintest blush of dawn touching the eastern peaks. But the pack was stirring. She could feel it. The energy humming through the stone, sharp and restless and angry. The council chamber doors stood open. Inside, the room was packed. Elders lined the walls. Warriors stood silent near the hearth, and at the center, bound in silver chains that burned faintly against his skin, knelt Elder Corwin. Lena stopped in the doorway. Kai stood behind the elder, his posture rigid, his eyes golden and bright and fixed on her the instant she appeared. The bond pulsed. Hard. Come in, Kai said. His voice was steady, but she heard the edge beneath it. The restraint. Lena stepped inside. Every gaze in the room turned toward her. Some curious, some wary, a few almost reverent. She lifted her chin and walked forward. Kai gestured to the long table where parchment scrolls lay scattered across the surface. Ink still drying on some, others old and brittle. These were found in Elder Corwin's private study, Kai said, hidden beneath a false floorboard. The pack scribe has already confirmed the forgeries. Lena's throat tightened. She reached out, her fingers trembling as she touched the nearest scroll. The bloodline registry. Her mother's name, crossed out, replaced with another family's claim. He altered the records. Kai continued, his voice colder now. To strip your family of rank. To justify seizing your lands. And to ensure no one would question his authority when he ordered your mother exiled. A ripple of shock moved through the room. Lena's vision blurred. She blinked hard, forced herself to breathe. He also accepted bribes from the northern traders, Kai said. In exchange for illegal access to packed territory, which means he's been selling our security, our trust, for gold. The room erupted. Voices rising, elders shouting denials, warriors demanding justice. Kai's growls silenced them all. Enough. The word cracked like thunder. Every wolf in the room dropped their gaze, even the elders, even Corwin, though his lips twisted in a sneer. You think this proves anything? Corwin spat, his voice rasping, defiant. She's a liar, a traitor's daughter. You're destroying this pack for a girl who told the truth. Kai cut in, his tone lethal, while you hid behind tradition and corruption. Corwin's face flushed dark. You dare accuse me? I've served this pack for 30 years. You stole from your own people, Kai said. You forged sacred records. You endangered every wolf under my protection for your own greed. He stepped around the elder, his gaze sweeping the room. Lena came to me with an accusation, Kai said. She had no proof, no allies. She knew the risk, and she spoke anyway. Lena's chest tightened. She defied the ceremony because she believed the pack deserved better than lies. Kai continued, his voice steady now, certain, and she was right. Silence filled the chamber. Kai turned his gaze to Lena. The bond flared so bright she felt it in her bones. The law is clear, he said quietly. Elder Corwin will be stripped of rank and title, his lands forfeit, his bloodline removed from the registry. A murmur of approval rippled through the warriors. And the girl? One of the older elders asked. His voice careful. What becomes of her claim? Kai's jaw tightened. Her family's lands will be restored. Her mother's name reinstated in the records, and her bloodline recognized as it should have been from the beginning. Lena's breath hitched. But, the elder hesitated. Alpha, there are whispers. The younger wolves are saying, they're saying she was sent by the moon goddess. That the prophecy, Kai interrupted, is not for us to interpret. But I will say this. He looked directly at Lena, his eyes burning with something fierce and protective, and unmistakably possessive. Lena acted with courage when the rest of us were silent. He said, she stood alone against corruption, and whether the moon goddess sent her or not, the pack owes her a debt. The room fell quiet. Then one of the younger warriors stepped forward. He dropped to one knee, head bowed. We stand with her, he said. Another warrior knelt. Then another, the movement spreading through the room like wildfire until half the council chamber was on their knees, heads bowed in respect. Lena's throat closed. Tears burned her eyes. Kai's gaze never left hers. And in that moment, surrounded by kneeling wolves and broken chains and the weight of prophecy humming in the air, Lena felt the bond settle into something deeper, something unshakable, something that whispered of destiny and defiance and a future. Neither of them could deny. The alarm horns sounded at dawn. Lena woke in the guarded chamber to the low, rolling blast that made the stone walls shiver. She threw off the blanket and stumbled to the window, her heart already racing. Smoke rose from the eastern border. She pressed her palms to the cold glass, watched figures moving in the distance, dark shapes against the pale morning sky. The rival pack. A door slammed somewhere below. Voices shouted orders. The sound of boots on stone echoed through the corridors. Lena turned and grabbed her cloak. The guard outside her door blocked her path when she tried to leave. You're to stay here, he said, his voice firm but not unkind. Alpha's orders. The pack is under attack, Lena said, her pulse pounding in her ears. I'm not going to hide while people die. You're under his protection. That means I'm part of this pack, she interrupted, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. And I'm not staying locked in a room while wolves fight for their lives. The guard hesitated. Then the bond flared, hot and urgent, and Lena felt Kai's presence like a burn across her ribs. He was shifting. She could feel it. The surge of his wolf rising, the raw power flooding the bond until her knees nearly buckled. Let me pass, she said quietly. The guard looked at her for a long moment, then stepped aside. Lena ran. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her cloak streaming behind her, the sound of horns still blaring as she burst out into the courtyard. Warriors poured through the gates. Some already shifted, others strapping on armor and weapons as they moved. Lena scanned the chaos, searching for Kai, but he was already gone. She felt him through the bond, distant now, moving fast toward the border. Her chest ached with the absence. A younger wolf stumbled past her, barely more than 16, his hands shaking as he tried to buckle his sword belt. Wait, Lena said. He turned, eyes wide, frightened. You're going to the front line? She asked. He nodded, his throat working. I'm supposed to, but I've never. I mean, I trained, but. Lena stepped closer, put her hand on his shoulder. You're not alone, she said, her voice calm, steady. You fight with your pack. You protect the wolves beside you. And you come home. He stared at her. Then his breathing slowed. His hands stopped shaking. You're the one from the ceremony, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The one who defied the elders. I'm the one who told the truth, Lena said. And I'm telling you the truth now. You're strong enough, you're ready. He straightened, nodded once, then turned and ran toward the gates. Lena watched him go, her heart pounding, and made a decision. She found a group of younger wolves gathered near the armory, most of them barely old enough to fight, all of them pale and tense as they waited for orders that hadn't come. Listen to me, Lena said. They turned, stared at her with a mix of confusion and desperate hope. The Alpha is at the front line with the warriors, she continued, but the eastern border is long. There are gaps, places the enemy could slip through if we're not watching. One of the girls stepped forward. What are you saying? I'm saying we can't just stand here, Lena said, her voice firm. We can patrol the inner perimeter, watch for scouts, protect the ones who can't fight. But we weren't given orders, a boy said, his eyes darting toward the gates. If the Alpha finds out. The Alpha is busy keeping you alive, Lena interrupted, and I'm not asking you to disobey him. I'm asking you to protect your home. Silence. Then the girl nodded. I'm with you. Another wolf stepped forward. Then another. Within minutes, Lena had 20 young wolves following her toward the eastern perimeter. They moved in pairs, spread out along the tree line, watching for movement, listening for the sound of intruders. Lena's hands trembled as she gripped the knife one of the warriors had given her. She'd never fought before, never held a weapon with intent to use it, but the bond pulsed steady in her chest, a thread connecting her to Kai even across the distance, and she held on to that feeling like a lifeline. An hour passed, then another. The sun climbed higher, the smoke from the border began to thin, and then Lena saw it. A figure moving through the trees. Low to the ground. Dark fur, eyes that glinted red in the shadows. A rival scout. She signaled to the nearest wolf, a girl named Marin, and they moved together. Silent, careful. The scout didn't see them until it was too late. Marin shifted mid-leap. Her wolf formed smaller but faster. She hit the intruder hard, teeth bared, and Lena lunged forward with the knife. She didn't think, just moved. The blade found its mark. The scout collapsed with a yelp that cut off abruptly. Lena stumbled back, breathing hard, her hands shaking violently now. Marin shifted back, touched Lena's arm. You saved my life, she said, her voice awed, grateful. Lena couldn't speak, but the bond flared again, fierce and protective, and she knew Kai felt it, knew he felt her fear, her courage, her defiance, and somewhere on the front line, bloodied and victorious, she knew he was coming for her. Kai saw the smoke before he reached the settlement, thick and dark against the morning sky. His wolf howled in fury, in fear because the smoke was coming from the wrong direction. Not the border, the inner perimeter. He shifted mid-run, his human form stumbling as exhaustion and rage fought for control. Blood streaked his chest and arms, none of it his own, but every muscle screamed protest as he pushed harder. Faster. The bond pulsed erratic in his chest. Lena. She was alive. He felt that much. But the thread between them thrummed with adrenaline and terror and something else. Pride. He rounded the final hill and stopped dead. The inner courtyard was chaos. Warriors tended wounded, elders barked orders, and in the center of it all, kneeling beside a young wolf whose leg was torn open, was Lena. Her hands were covered in blood, her borrowed tunic torn at the shoulder. But her face was calm, focused. She pressed cloth against the wound with steady pressure, while speaking softly to the boy beneath her. Kai's wolf surged. Mine. Protect. Claim. He forced himself to breathe. To scan the rest of the scene. A dozen young wolves stood nearby, watching Lena with something close to reverence. Marin was among them, her arm bandaged but her stance proud. One of the older warriors approached Kai, bowed briefly. "My king," he said, his voice rough with fatigue. "The girl," she rallied the young ones, "patrolled the gaps we couldn't cover." Kai's jaw tightened. "She disobeyed my order? She saved lives." The warrior met his gaze without flinching. "They took down 3 scouts before we even knew they'd breached the inner line." Kai said nothing. His eyes locked on Lena. She finished tying off the bandage and stood slowly. Her gaze swept the courtyard, taking inventory. And then she turned. Their eyes met. The bond flared so bright it stole his breath. She didn't flinch. Didn't look away. Just stood there, bloodied and defiant and impossibly brave. And Kai felt something crack open inside his chest. He crossed the distance in 6 strides. Lena's chin lifted as he approached, but her hands trembled at her sides. "You ordered me to stay in my room," she said quietly. "I did. I couldn't." Kai stopped a breath away, close enough to scent the fear and determination rolling off her in waves. Close enough to see the dark smudge of ash on her cheek. "You could have died," he said, his voice low, controlled. But the wolf inside him snarled at the thought. "So could you," Lena replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "So could everyone here. I couldn't just... wait." Kai reached out, slowly. Gave her time to pull away. She didn't. His thumb brushed the ash from her cheek. His touch, featherlight, reverent. "You're bleeding," he murmured. Lena glanced down at her hands, shook her head. "It's not mine." "Your shoulder," she blinked. Touched the torn fabric. "Oh, that's... nothing. Just a scrape." Kai's wolf growled. He forced his hand to drop, forced himself to step back before he did something reckless in front of the entire pack. Like pull her into his arms and never let go. "You defied me," he said, not angry, just awed. Lena's lips quirked, almost a smile. "I seem to be good at that." A ripple of low laughter moved through the young wolves watching, nearby. Kai turned to face them. They straightened immediately, eyes wide, respectful. But there was no fear. Only loyalty. He looked back at Lena. She'd won them without a title. Without a mark. Without anything except her courage and her refusal to stand idle while others bled. She'd proven herself in the way that mattered most. Through action. Through sacrifice. Through leading when no one else would. His wolf howled again. But this time, not in fury, in pride, in possessive need. "Mine. Queen, mate." "Go inside," Kai said softly. "Get cleaned up. Eat something." Lena hesitated. "The wounded will be cared for." He held her gaze. Let her see the truth in his eyes. "You've done enough. More than enough." She searched his face for a long moment, then nodded, turned toward the hall. Kai watched her go. Watched the way the young wolves parted to let her pass. The way Marin touched her arm in silent gratitude. The way the pack, his pack, looked at her. Not as an outsider. Not as a disruption. As someone worth following. Worth protecting. Worth kneeling for, one of the elders approached. His expression tight, disapproving. "My king," he began. "The girl." "Saved lives," Kai interrupted, his voice flat, final. "Proved her worth, and earned the loyalty of warriors twice her age." The elder's mouth thinned. "She defied your direct command." Kai turned, met the elder's gaze with gold-flecked eyes that promised violence if he spoke another word against her. "She did what I would have done," he said quietly. "What any true leader would have done." He let the words hang, let the elder hear the unspoken truth beneath them. "She's already your queen. You just don't know it yet." The elder bowed stiffly, retreated. Kai turned back toward the hall. Lena had disappeared inside, but the bond pulsed steady between them. Warm, alive, unbreakable. And for the first time since the ceremony, since the moment her scent had hit him and turned his world upside down, Kai let himself believe. The prophecy wasn't a curse. It was a promise. And Lena wasn't going to destroy his kingdom. She was going to save it. Lena found him on the balcony above the great hall. The moon hung low and full. Silver light spilled across stone. Kai stood at the railing, shoulders tense, hands braced against weathered granite like he was holding the entire kingdom upright through sheer will. She should have stayed in her room, should have let him brood alone. But the bond pulled at her ribs, insistent, urgent. And there was one question she couldn't leave unanswered. "Kai?" He didn't turn, but his spine straightened. "You should be resting," he said quietly. "So should you." A pause. Then a breath that might have been a laugh. Might have been something darker. Lena stepped closer, close enough to see the tension in his jaw, the way his knuckles pressed white against stone. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Ask." She hesitated, let the silence stretch between them, then forced the words out. "The prophecy. The one your mother spoke before she died." Lena's voice steadied. "What was the final line?" Kai went still. Dangerously still. "Who told you about that?" His tone was flat, too controlled. "Marin." Lena didn't apologize. "She said your mother's last words were never written down, only spoken to the council. But everyone knows. There's more to it than what the pack was told." Kai's hands flexed, released, flexed again. "It doesn't matter." "It does." Lena moved to stand beside him, not touching, but close enough that the bond hummed between them. "Because you're afraid of it." His head turned. Gold eyes locked onto hers. "I'm not afraid." "Liar." The word came out soft, without malice. "Just truth." Kai's jaw worked. He looked away, out over the courtyard where the pack was beginning to settle for the night. Fires burned low. Voices murmured. "She said." His voice was rough, scraped raw. "The queen will either unite the kingdom or burn it to ash." Lena's breath caught. "And the king," Kai continued, still not looking at her, "will be powerless to stop her. Because the bond will strip him of reason, of control, of everything that makes him fit to lead." The words fell like stones, heavy, final. Lena stared at him, at the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his hands gripped stone like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. "You think I'm going to destroy you," she whispered. "I think." Kai exhaled sharply. "I think I've spent my entire life learning control. Learning to lead with my head instead of my instincts. Learning to choose duty over desire." He finally turned to face her, eyes burning. "And then you walked into that ceremony and shattered every wall I ever built." Lena's chest ached. "Kai, I can't stop thinking about you. The confession tore out of him. Raw. Desperate. I can't sleep. Can't breathe without feeling you through the bond. Can't make a single decision without wondering what you'd think, what you'd want, whether I'm protecting you enough. His voice dropped. And that terrifies me, because a king who can't think past his mate is a king who'll watch his kingdom burn while he holds her hand. Silence crashed down between them. Lena's pulse hammered. Loud. Frantic. She wanted to reach for him, touch him, close the unbearable distance. But she forced herself to stay still. Do you trust me? She asked quietly. Kai blinked, thrown by the question. What? Do you trust me? Lena held his gaze. Not the bond, not the prophecy. Me. He stared at her, something flickering behind the gold. Yes, he said finally. I do. Then trust me when I say this. Lena stepped closer. Let the bond flare warm between them. You haven't lost control. You've found balance. Kai shook his head. You don't understand. I do. Her voice was firm. Because I feel it too. The pull, the need, the way everything else fades when you're near. She swallowed. But that doesn't make me weak. It makes me stronger. Because now I have something worth fighting for. Kai's breath hitched. Lena, you defended me to the council, she continued. You listened when I accused an elder of murder. You let me fight beside your warriors even though it went against every instinct screaming at you to lock me away and keep me safe. She paused. You didn't lose yourself to the bond, Kai. You chose to trust it. To trust me. His hands left the railing, one lifted, hovering between them. What if I can't protect you and the kingdom both? His voice cracked. What if the prophecy is right and I have to choose? Lena caught his hand, threaded her fingers through his. Then we'll burn together, she said simply. Or we'll build something new from the ashes. Kai's eyes widened, searching hers, looking for doubt, for fear. But Lena didn't flinch. Because she'd already made her choice. The moment she'd stood in that ceremony and spoken the truth. The moment she'd felt the bond ignite and known. This was always meant to be. Not a curse. A promise. Kai's other hand rose, cupped her cheek, thumb brushing just beneath her jaw. You're not afraid, he whispered. Awed. Lena leaned into his touch. I'm terrified, she admitted. But not of you. Not of this. Then what? She smiled. Small but real. Of losing you before we've even begun. Kai's breath shuddered out. He pressed his forehead to hers. The bond sang between them, bright, unbreakable. And for the first time since his mother's prophecy, Kai let himself hope. The full moon rose over the assembly grounds like a judge's eye. Silver light spilled across packed earth and upturned faces. Every wolf in the kingdom had gathered. Waiting, Lena stood at the base of the stone steps. Alone. Her hands were steady. She'd forced them to be. But her heart hammered so loud she was certain the entire pack could hear it. Kai stood to her right, close enough that his warmth bled into her shoulder, far enough that the space between them felt intentional, measured. He hadn't touched her since they'd left the balcony. The council sat in a crescent behind them, silent, watching. Elder Corbin knelt at the center of the circle, his wrists bound with silver cord, his head bowed. But his eyes, they burned with defiance. Lena stepped forward. The crowd parted. She felt their stares like brands. Judging, measuring, wondering if the girl who'd broken tradition would burn them all. You asked for proof, Lena said. Her voice carried across the silence. Clear, unwavering. I gave you my word, my memories, the testimony of those too afraid to speak. She paused. Tonight, I give you the truth. Kai moved beside her. Not ahead. Beside, his presence a wall of strength at her back. Elder Corbin! Lena stopped 3 paces from the kneeling man. You served this pack for 30 years. You counseled 3 Alpha Kings. You upheld our laws. Or, so we believed. Corbin's lip curled. Believed, he spat. The word of a child, an outsider, and you dare. I dare because you murdered my mother, Lena's voice cracked. Just once. I dare because you sold border patrol routes to the rival pack in exchange for gold and influence. I dare because you used the choosing ceremony to bind young wolves to silence with threats and shame. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kai's growl rumbled low. A warning. Corbin laughed, bitter, broken. You have no proof, only accusations from the desperate and the damned. Lena reached into her pocket, drew out a folded scrap of parchment, blood-stained, torn at the edges. This was in my mother's hand when she died, Lena said quietly. She wrote your name, the location of your meeting with the rival Alpha's emissary, the date, the price. She held it up, let the moonlight catch the faded ink. She died trying to warn the king. You made sure she never reached him? Silence crashed down. Corbin's face drained of color. Kai stepped forward, took the parchment from Lena's hand. His fingers brushed hers. Warm. Grounding. He read it in silence, then lifted his gaze to the elder. Is this your hand? Kai's voice was stone. The signature at the bottom? Corbin's jaw worked. No sound came out. Answer your king. Kai's eyes flared gold, wolfish, barely restrained. It was necessity. Corbin's voice shook. The rival pack was growing stronger. We needed information, leverage. I was protecting. You were lining your pockets. Lena's voice cut through his excuses. And when my mother discovered it, you killed her, made it look like a rogue attack. She took a breath, steadied herself. You let me grow up believing I was cursed, that I'd brought death to my family. You used my grief to keep me silent. Kai's hand found the small of her back, steadying, anchoring. The law is clear, Kai said. His voice rang across the assembly. Betrayal of the pack, murder of a packmate, conspiracy with enemy forces. He paused. Let each word land like a hammer. Elder Corbin, you are stripped of rank. Title, protection. His eyes blazed. You are exiled, effective immediately. If you set foot on packlands again, you will be hunted. The crowd erupted, some in approval, others in shock. But Lena felt only the weight lifting from her chest. Corbin lunged, silver cords snapping. His claws extended as he surged toward Lena with a snarl of rage and desperation. Kai moved faster. One hand caught Corbin's throat, slammed him into the stone. The crack echoed across the grounds. You lost the right to touch her the moment you took her mother, Kai growled, his canines elongated. Eyes full wolf. Be grateful exile is all you're given. Corbin crumpled when Kai released him. Guards dragged him away, his protests fading into the night. Lena exhaled, slow, shaking. Kai turned to her, his hand still at her back. Are you all right? She nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. The crowd murmured. Restless, uncertain, Kai raised his free hand. Silence fell instantly. This woman, he said, his voice carrying to every corner, Lena of the Borderlands, has proven her courage, her loyalty, her right to stand among us. He paused, let his gaze sweep the assembly. She uncovered corruption we were blind to. She fought beside our warriors when the rival pack attacked. She risked everything to protect this kingdom. Lena's heart stuttered. Kai's hand slid from her back to her hand. He laced their fingers together, held tight. The prophecy spoke of a queen who would unite or destroy, Kai continued. I believe she was sent to cleanse, to heal, to lead us into something better than what we were. He turned to Lena, his eyes soft, searching. If you'll have us, Lena stared at him. At the hope and fear and trust shining in his gaze. The bond flared between them, bright as the moon overhead. She squeezed his hand. I will, The crowd parted as Kai led Lena to the center of the assembly grounds. The full moon hung directly overhead. Silver light bathed the stones in pale fire. Lena's pulse hammered in her throat. Every eye in the kingdom watched them now. Kai released her hand, stepped back, her breath caught. The choosing ceremony. Again. But this time, everything was different. Kai's voice rang clear across the silent gathering. The prophecy named a queen who would unite or destroy. Tonight, we choose unity. He dropped to one knee. The pack gasped, a ripple of shock spreading through the crowd like wind through tall grass. Lena's knees nearly buckled. An Alpha King did not kneel, not to anyone. But Kai's golden eyes held hers. Steady, certain. No hesitation in the set of his shoulders. "Lena of the Borderlands," he said, his voice quiet now, meant only for her, even as hundreds listened. "You defied tradition to speak truth. You stood beside our warriors when death came for us. You healed wounds I didn't even know this pack carried." He held out his hand, palm up, offering. "I kneel not because the prophecy demands it," he continued, "but because you've earned my respect, my trust, my loyalty." The bond flared between them, hot and bright and undeniable. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. "I offer you the Queen's mark," Kai said, "not as a chain, not as duty, but as partnership, as choice." His throat worked. Vulnerability clear in every line of his face. "Will you stand beside me?" he asked. "Not behind, not beneath, beside." Lena's vision blurred. She'd spent her whole life believing she was cursed, broken, unwanted. And now an Alpha King knelt before her, offering everything. She stepped forward, placed her hand in his. "Yes," she whispered. His fingers closed around hers, warm, strong, trembling just slightly. The bond blazed. Lena gasped as silver light erupted from where their hands joined. It spiraled upward into the night sky, bright as lightning, visible to every watching eye. The pack murmured. "Odd." Kai rose slowly, never breaking eye contact. His free hand lifted to cup her jaw, thumb brushing the curve of her cheekbone. "This will hurt," he said softly. "For a moment." Lena nodded, her pulse racing. She knew what came next. The Queen's mark, a bite at the juncture of neck and shoulder, where the mate bond would anchor itself in flesh and spirit. Kai's eyes searched hers one last time, asking permission even now. She tilted her head, baring her throat. His breath hitched. Then he leaned in, pressed his lips to the curve of her neck, gentle, reverent. Lena shivered, his canines elongated. She felt the sharp points graze her skin, and then he bit down. Pain flared white-hot through her shoulder. She gasped, fingers tightening on his hand. But the pain lasted only a heartbeat. It melted into warmth, into light, into a connection so deep and profound, she couldn't tell where she ended. And he began. The bond snapped into place with an audible crack. Silver light exploded outward from them both, a shockwave of pure energy that swept across the assembly grounds. Wolves stumbled back, shielding their eyes. When the light faded, Lena stood trembling in Kai's arms, his forehead pressed to hers, his breathing ragged. "I feel you," she whispered, awed. "Everything you feel, I feel it too." Kai's hands framed her face, his thumbs stroking her jaw. "I know," he murmured. "It's overwhelming," she laughed, a shaky sound. "That's one word for it." His lips curved, almost a smile. Then he pulled back just enough to trace the fresh mark on her neck. His touch feather-light, reverent. The mark glowed faintly silver, already healing but permanent. A crescent moon, intertwined with jagged lines like lightning. "Beautiful," Kai breathed. Lena's cheeks flushed. The pack began to howl, low at first, then building. dozens of voices rising in unison until the sound shook the stones beneath their feet. It wasn't a challenge. It was acceptance. Acknowledgement. Kai turned toward the assembly, his arm sliding around Lena's waist to hold her close. "Your queen," he said simply. The howls grew louder. Warriors dropped to one knee. Then the council members. Then the younger wolves and the elders who'd stayed silent during Corbin's reign. One by one, the entire pack knelt. Lena's throat tightened. She'd broken their ceremony, defied their traditions, challenged everything they believed. And now they knelt before her. Kai's hand squeezed her waist, grounding her. "They see what I see," he murmured against her ear. "Courage, strength, a leader worth following." Lena swallowed hard. "I'm terrified I'll fail them." "Then we'll fail together," Kai said, his voice steady. "And get back up. Together." She looked up at him, at the certainty in his golden eyes. The bond hummed between them. Warm, steady, unbreakable. She nodded slowly, then turned to face the pack. "I didn't come here seeking a crown," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "I came seeking justice, truth, a chance to heal." She paused, let her gaze sweep the sea of kneeling wolves. "But, if you'll have me, I will serve this pack with everything I am. I will fight for you, protect you, stand beside your alpha as partner and equal." Her hand found Kai's, laced their fingers together. "I will be the queen," the prophecy demanded. She finished, not through destruction, but through unity. The howls erupted again, louder this time, joyful. Kai pulled her close, pressed a kiss to her temple. "Together," he whispered. Lena leaned into him, into the warmth and strength and absolute certainty of the bond. "Together," she agreed. The pack rose slowly, one by one, their eyes still fixed on Lena and Kai as the silver glow of the bond faded to a soft shimmer beneath her skin. Kai's hand remained at her waist, steady, grounding. Lena could still feel the mark on her neck, pulsing faintly with warmth, with power, with something ancient and undeniable. The prophecy hadn't destroyed them. It had made them whole. Mira stepped forward first, her face streaked with tears but smiling. She dropped into a bow. "My queen," she said softly. "My alpha." Others followed. Warriors who'd fought beside Kai for years. Younger wolves who'd rallied behind Lena during the attack. Even some of the elders who'd once looked at her with suspicion now offered respectful nods. Kai's thumb traced slow circles against Lena's hip, soothing, reassuring. "We should address them properly," he murmured, low enough that only she could hear. "Together." Lena nodded, her throat tight. They moved as one, stepping forward to the edge of the platform where moonlight spilled across the stones like liquid silver. The pack quieted instantly. Kai spoke first, his voice carrying across the clearing with practiced authority. "Tonight we witness the fulfillment of a prophecy that has guided our people for generations." He paused. Let the weight of those words settle. But prophecy is not fate. It is choice. His hand found Lena's again, laced their fingers together and raised them high so the entire pack could see. Lena could have chosen destruction. Kai continued. She had every reason to. She'd been wronged. Her family betrayed. She could have torn this pack apart. Lena's pulse quickened. But she chose truth instead, Kai said, his voice softening. She chose courage, justice. She chose to stand and fight. Not for power, but for what was right. He turned to look at her. golden eyes burning with something fierce and tender all at once. "That is the queen you will follow," he finished. "Not because prophecy demands it, but because she has proven herself worthy." The pack erupted into howls again. Approving. Joyful. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. Kai stepped back slightly, giving her space, giving her the floor. She took a shaky breath. Then she spoke. "I won't pretend I know how to do this," she said honestly, her voice quieter than Kai's but no less clear. I wasn't raised to lead. I don't know all your customs or traditions." She met the eyes of the wolves watching her, saw curiosity, hope, a few lingering doubts. "But I know what it's like to lose everything," she continued, "to feel powerless, to watch corruption take root and spread unchecked." Her grip on Kai's hand tightened. "I know what it's like to be afraid," she admitted, "and I know what it takes to stand up anyway." A few wolves nodded, murmurs of agreement rippling through the crowd. "So I promise you this," Lena said, her voice strengthening. "I will listen. I will learn. I will fight beside you when danger comes and mourn with you when we lose those we love." She glanced at Kai, at the pride and warmth radiating from him through the bond. "I will stand as your alpha's equal," she said. "Not above him, not beneath him, beside him." Kai's jaw tightened, emotion flickering across his face. "And together," Lena turned back to the pack, "we will build something stronger than prophecy, something rooted in trust and truth and the choices we make every single day." The silence that followed felt sacred. Then Mira stepped forward again, her voice breaking. "For the queen," she called out. The pack echoed her, a thunderous chorus that shook the air. "For the queen!" Lena's eyes burned. Kai pulled her close, his lips brushing her temple. "You're magnificent," he murmured against her skin. She laughed, a wet sound. "I'm terrified." "Good," he said, a hint of amusement threading through his tone. "So am I." She tilted her head back to look at him. Saw the honesty there, the vulnerability. "Guess we're doing this," she whispered. "Together," Kai said firmly. He turned toward the council members still gathered near the platform. "The threat from the rival pack has been dealt with for now, but we remain vigilant. Double patrols on the northern border. I want scouts reporting every 6 hours." His voice shifted seamlessly into command. Confident, assured. The warriors responded immediately, nodding, moving to carry out his orders. Then Kai looked at Lena, his expression softening. "And you need rest." She opened her mouth to argue. "Don't," he said gently. "You've been running on adrenaline and sheer will for 2 days. The bond is strong, but your body still needs to recover." Lena hesitated, then nodded. He was right. Exhaustion was creeping in now, settling heavy in her bones as the rush of the ceremony faded. Kai kept his arm around her as they descended the platform steps. The pack parted for them. Respectful, reverent. Mira fell into step beside them, her face still tear-streaked but glowing. "I'll have food sent to your chambers," she offered quietly. "Thank you," Lena said softly. They walked through the stone corridors in silence, the weight of what had just happened pressing down like a blanket. When they reached Kai's private chamber, their chamber now, he pushed the door open and guided her inside. The fire had burned low, embers glowing softly in the hearth. Kai closed the door behind them, locked it with a quiet click. Then he turned to her. His hands framed her face, gentle, reverent. "You are everything I didn't know I needed," he whispered. Lena's breath caught. She rose on her toes and kissed him. Slow, tender, full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Kai traced the mark on her neck one more time, his touch feather-light. "My queen," he murmured. Lena smiled, her heart full. My king. They stood together in the firelight, the bond humming between them like a song. And outside, the pack howled their approval into the night.